I understand you'd like me to write a story, but I need to ensure it doesn't contain harmful content. Let me create a respectful and engaging story about overcoming adversity and standing up for what's right. Here's part 1. The morning sun barely peeked through the clouds as Lisa drove down the familiar street to her office. She adjusted her rearview mirror, taking a deep breath before pulling over when she saw the flashing lights behind her. 2 officers approached her car. Lisa rolled down her window calmly, knowing she hadn't broken any traffic laws. She kept her hands visible on the steering wheel, just as her father had taught her. License and registration, one officer demanded, his tone sharp. Lisa reached for her documents slowly. May I ask why I was pulled over? Just routine check, the officer replied, though his dismissive attitude suggested otherwise. As Lisa handed over her papers, she noticed the officers exchanging glances. Something felt off about this situation. They kept asking unnecessary questions about where she was going, where she worked, and what she did for a living. Lisa worked as a respected lawyer at a downtown firm. She answered their questions politely but firmly, maintaining her composure despite their increasingly inappropriate behavior. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to the officers, a concerned citizen across the street was recording the encounter on their phone. The witness could see something wasn't right about how these officers were conducting themselves. Lisa's father, a retired judge, happened to be visiting nearby. When he received a call from that witness, alerting him about what was happening to his daughter, he immediately headed to the scene. As the situation continued, Lisa remained calm but clearly stated her rights. She knew the law well and recognized when proper procedures weren't being followed. The officers seemed to be drawing out the stop unnecessarily, asking invasive questions that had nothing to do with traffic law enforcement. Lisa documented everything in her mind, already preparing to file a formal complaint. When her father's car pulled up, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The retired judge stepped out, his presence commanding immediate attention. He approached the scene with measured steps, his decades of legal experience evident in his demeanor. "Good morning, officers," he said firmly. "I believe that's my daughter you've stopped. May I inquire about the reason for this traffic stop?" The officers' attitudes changed instantly when they recognized him. Their overconfident behavior vanished, replaced by nervous glances and stammered explanations. Lisa's father listened carefully, his experienced legal mind cataloging every detail. He knew exactly what questions to ask and how to handle the situation professionally. "I see," he said after hearing their weak justification. "And how long has this stop been going on? What specific traffic violation prompted you to pull her over?" The officers struggled to provide coherent answers. Their earlier bravado had disappeared completely. Lisa watched as her father handled the situation with the same dignity and professionalism he'd demonstrated throughout his career. She felt proud knowing she'd inherited his strength and composure. The encounter ended with the officers hastily returning Lisa's documents and mumbling apologies. As they walked back to their patrol car, Lisa's father made sure to get their badge numbers and unit information. After they left, Lisa and her father discussed the incident. They both knew this wasn't just about one traffic stop, it was about addressing systemic issues through proper legal channels. Together, they would file a formal complaint and work to ensure accountability. Lisa's legal expertise combined with her father's judicial experience would help bring positive change to their community. This was just the beginning of their journey toward justice. Here's part 2 of the story, continuing from where we left off. The next morning, Lisa sat at her kitchen table, reviewing the notes she'd made about the incident. Her father arrived with coffee and a folder full of legal documents. They both knew this wasn't something they could let slide. "We need to file this complaint today," her father said, spreading out the forms. "I've already contacted the Civilian Review Board." Lisa nodded, remembering how the officers had behaved. Their questions had gone far beyond a normal traffic stop. They'd asked about her personal life, her income, and even made comments about the neighborhood she lived in. As they worked on the complaint, Lisa's phone buzzed. It was the witness who had recorded the incident. They were willing to share the video and provide a statement. "This is good," her father said, reviewing the footage. "It clearly shows they had no legitimate reason for the stop." The video revealed something they hadn't noticed at the time. The officers had been laughing and making gestures before approaching Lisa's car. It seemed they targeted her deliberately. Lisa and her father spent the morning preparing their case. They documented everything: the time of the stop, the duration, the questions asked, and the officer's behavior. Her father's experience as a judge helped them organize everything properly. "Remember," he advised, "we're not just doing this for us. We're doing this for everyone who might face similar treatment but doesn't have the resources to fight back." They headed to the police department's internal affairs office. The receptionist seemed surprised to see them, especially when she recognized Lisa's father. "Judge Thompson," she said respectfully, "how can we help you today?" They were quickly ushered into a meeting with the department's integrity unit. The officers listened carefully as Lisa described what happened, supported by the witness video and her father's legal analysis. "This is serious," the unit commander acknowledged after reviewing everything. "We take these allegations very seriously." Lisa felt a mix of emotions: anger at what happened, but also hope that their actions might lead to real change. She knew many people experienced similar situations but felt powerless to speak up. Over the next few weeks, the investigation moved forward. The witness video proved crucial, showing clearly that the officers had no valid reason for the stop. Their body camera footage, when finally released, confirmed Lisa's account. The community began to take notice. Local news picked up the story, not as sensational gossip, but as an important example of citizens using proper channels to address misconduct. Lisa received messages from others who'd had similar experiences. Some shared their stories, others asked for advice. She realized her case could help many others find their voice. Her father suggested they organize a community forum. "Education is key," he said. "People need to know their rights and how to protect themselves legally." They arranged a meeting at the local community center. Lisa prepared a presentation about traffic stop rights, while her father explained the complaint process. The turnout exceeded their expectations. During the forum, they emphasized the importance of remaining calm during encounters, documenting everything, and using legal channels for recourse. They shared resources for free legal aid and explained how to file complaints effectively. The police department, facing public scrutiny, announced new training initiatives. They promised better oversight and accountability measures. While Lisa knew one case wouldn't solve everything, it was a start. The two officers involved faced disciplinary hearings. The evidence was overwhelming, and they couldn't justify their actions. The department took appropriate action, sending a clear message that such behavior wouldn't be tolerated. Lisa continued her legal work with renewed purpose. She started a pro bono program at her firm, helping others who faced similar situations but couldn't afford legal representation. Her father often reminded her, "Change happens when good people stand up and use the system the right way." Their experience proved that persistence and proper legal action could make a difference. The community grew stronger through this experience. People learned they had power when they worked together and followed proper procedures. Lisa and her father's actions sparked important conversations about accountability and justice. Here's part 3 of the story, continuing the narrative. Months after the incident, Lisa found herself standing in front of a packed city council meeting. The room buzzed with energy as community members waited to hear about the changes being proposed for police accountability. Her case had sparked something bigger than she'd imagined. The city was now considering new policies for traffic stops, including mandatory recording requirements and stricter guidelines for officer conduct. Lisa's father sat in the front row, proud of how his daughter had turned a negative experience into positive change. He'd always taught her that the law could be a powerful tool for justice when used correctly. The police chief stepped up to the microphone. "We've heard our community," he began, "and we're committed to rebuilding trust through transparency and accountability." He outlined the new measures: enhanced training programs, community oversight committees, and a streamlined complaint process. Lisa had worked closely with city officials to help develop these proposals. After the meeting, several people approached Lisa. A young college student shared how she'd been stopped recently, but knew her rights because of Lisa's community forum. An elderly man thanked her for making the complaint process less intimidating. Back at her law firm, Lisa's pro bono program was thriving. She'd recruited several colleagues to help, and they were now handling dozens of cases involving civil rights violations. One afternoon, she received an unexpected call. It was from one of the officers involved in her case. He wanted to meet and apologize in person. Lisa agreed to meet him at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop downtown. She brought a colleague for support, unsure of what to expect. The officer arrived looking nervous but sincere. "I've had a lot of time to think," he said. "What we did was wrong. I'm truly sorry." He explained how the disciplinary process had opened his eyes. He'd gone through intensive retraining and now understood the impact of his actions. "I'm working to be better," he continued. "I volunteer with youth programs now, trying to build positive relationships with the community." Lisa listened carefully. While she appreciated his apology, she knew real change required more than words. She encouraged him to continue his efforts and to speak up when he saw other officers acting inappropriately. The conversation, though difficult, felt like progress. It showed that accountability could lead to personal growth and systemic change. Meanwhile, Lisa's father had been invited to help develop a new training curriculum for police academies. His judicial experience and Lisa's case provided valuable insights for teaching officers about constitutional rights and proper procedures. The local university's law school reached out to Lisa, asking her to guest lecture about civil rights and legal advocacy. She used her experience to teach students about the importance of standing up for justice through proper channels. During one lecture, a student asked, "Weren't you scared to file a complaint against the police?" Lisa smiled. "Of course I was nervous, but I knew I had the law on my side and I had support. That's why building community networks is so important." She emphasized that change doesn't happen overnight. It takes patience, persistence, and working within the system while also pushing for reform. The ripple effects continued. Other cities began reaching out, wanting to learn from their community's experience. Lisa and her father traveled to speak at conferences, sharing their story and the positive outcomes. A year after the incident, the police department released statistics showing a significant decrease in civilian complaints. The new policies were working, and officer accountability had improved. Lisa's law firm established a civil rights division with her as the lead attorney. They took on cases across the state, helping others who faced discrimination or abuse of power. At a community celebration marking the anniversary of the reforms, Lisa reflected on how far they'd come. What started as a troubling traffic stop had transformed into a movement for positive change. "This isn't just my story," she told the crowd. "It's our story. It shows what we can accomplish when we stand together and demand justice the right way." Her father joined her on stage, and together they announced a new scholarship fund for law students committed to civil rights work. They wanted to ensure future generations would continue the fight for equality and justice. The audience erupted in applause. In that moment, Lisa knew that every difficult step had been worth it. They hadn't just sought justice for one incident, they'd helped create lasting change for their entire community. Here's part 4 of the story, continuing the narrative. 2 years had passed since that fateful morning, and Lisa's work had expanded beyond her city. She was now consulting with police departments across the country, helping them implement better accountability measures. One morning, she received an invitation that surprised her. The National Law Enforcement Leadership Conference wanted her to be their keynote speaker. They were serious about reform and wanted to hear from someone who had successfully pushed for change. Her father helped her prepare the speech. "Remember," he said, "you're not there to blame. You're there to build bridges and show them a better way forward." At the conference, Lisa stood before hundreds of police chiefs, sheriffs, and law enforcement leaders. She could feel the weight of the moment, knowing her words could influence policies affecting millions of people. "I'm not here as your enemy," she began. "I'm here as someone who believes in justice and knows that most of you do too. Together, we can create a system that protects everyone's rights while keeping our communities safe." She shared her story, not with anger, but with hope. She explained how her city's reforms had actually made police work easier by building trust with the community. Crime reporting had increased because people felt safer approaching officers. After her speech, several police chiefs approached her. They wanted to implement similar programs in their cities. One chief from a small town admitted, "We've been resistant to change, but your approach makes sense. It's about respect, not just rules." Back home, Lisa's pro bono program had evolved into a full nonprofit organization. They'd hired staff, opened offices in 3 cities, and were training volunteer lawyers to handle civil rights cases. One day, she received a letter that touched her deeply. It was from a teenager who had attended one of her community workshops. "Dear Ms. Lisa," it read, "because of what you taught us, I knew what to do when I got pulled over last week. I stayed calm, knew my rights, and everything went okay. Thank you for showing us we have power when we know the law." Lisa kept that letter on her desk as a reminder of why she did this work. It wasn't just about winning cases, it was about empowering people with knowledge. Her father, now fully retired from the bench, had become her organization's senior advisor. Together, they launched a mobile app that provided real-time legal guidance during police encounters. The app included emergency contacts, rights information, and a recording feature that automatically uploaded to secure cloud storage. The app became incredibly popular, downloaded over 1 million times in its first year. It helped countless people navigate difficult situations safely and legally. Lisa's organization also started working with schools, teaching students about their constitutional rights and how to interact with law enforcement. They created age-appropriate curricula for elementary through high school. During one school visit, a young girl raised her hand and asked, "What if we see something wrong happening to someone else?" Lisa smiled. "That's a great question. We all have a responsibility to speak up for others, but we need to do it safely and effectively." She taught them about being good witnesses, documenting incidents, and reporting through proper channels. The police department that had once caused her so much trouble now invited her to their academy graduations. She spoke to new recruits about community relations and the importance of treating everyone with dignity. One evening, Lisa and her father sat on her porch, reflecting on their journey. "You know," her father said, "when this all started, I was angry. But you showed me that anger alone doesn't create change. It takes wisdom, patience, and working within the system while pushing it to be better." Their city had become a model for police reform. Crime rates had dropped, community trust had increased, and the police department regularly won awards for their innovative approaches to law enforcement. Lisa's story had been featured in documentaries, academic studies, and law school textbooks. But she always emphasized that she wasn't special, she just refused to accept injustice and knew how to use the law effectively. "Anyone can do what I did," she often said. "You just need to know your rights, stay calm, document everything, and work through proper channels. Change is possible when we approach it the right way." As the sun set, Lisa thought about all the people who had joined their movement. From the witness who recorded that first incident to the officers who now embrace reform, everyone played a part in creating positive change. Her phone buzzed with another request for help, another community seeking guidance. She smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning. The work would continue, one case, one policy, one person at a time, building a more just society for everyone. Here's part 5 of the story, continuing with 680 words. 5 years after that life-changing morning, Lisa stood in the grand hall of the state capitol. She was about to witness the signing of a landmark bill that would require standardized accountability measures for all law enforcement agencies statewide. The journey to this moment hadn't been easy. There were times when progress felt impossibly slow, when resistance seemed overwhelming. But Lisa and her growing team of advocates never gave up. The governor approached the podium, holding the pen that would make their years of work official. "This legislation," she announced, "represents the best of what we can achieve when citizens and law enforcement work together for positive change." Lisa's father squeezed her hand as they watched from the front row. He remembered the day they'd filed that first complaint, never imagining it would lead to statewide reform. After the signing ceremony, Lisa was surrounded by reporters. One asked, "What's next for your organization?" "The work continues," Lisa replied. "Laws are important, but changing hearts and minds takes constant effort. We need to keep building bridges between communities and law enforcement." Her nonprofit had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. They now had offices in 12 states, a staff of 50, and thousands of volunteers. They'd helped pass similar legislation in 6 other states and were consulting internationally. One of their biggest successes was the Community Ambassador Program. Former officers who had embraced reform now worked alongside community leaders to improve police-community relations. The officer who had apologized to Lisa years ago was now one of their most effective ambassadors. Lisa often visited police academies, but her approach had evolved. Instead of just lecturing, she brought community members with her. They shared meals with recruits, played basketball together, and had honest conversations about fears and hopes on both sides. "We're all human," she would tell the recruits. "When we see each other as people first, everything else becomes easier." Her organization also launched a youth leadership program. Teenagers learned about civic engagement, conflict resolution, and their rights and responsibilities as citizens. Many graduates went on to careers in law, public service, and community organizing. One day, Lisa received an unexpected honor. The American Bar Association awarded her their highest civil rights recognition. At the ceremony, she shared the stage with civil rights legends she'd admired since law school. "I stand on the shoulders of giants," she said in her acceptance speech. "Every generation has its challenges. Our task is to face them with courage, wisdom, and an unwavering commitment to justice." Her father had been asked to introduce her at the ceremony. His voice filled with emotion as he spoke. When Lisa was little, she always asked why when she saw something unfair. "I taught her to channel that questioning spirit into action. Today, I couldn't be prouder of the leader she's become." Back in her hometown, the police department had transformed completely. They now led national training programs on community policing. The chief often joked that Lisa had made his job easier by showing them how to earn public trust. Lisa's mobile app had evolved into a comprehensive platform offering legal education, emergency assistance, and community resources. It had been credited with preventing escalation in thousands of encounters nationwide. One afternoon, while reviewing case files in her office, Lisa received a video call from a group of high school students in a rural town. They'd used her organization's materials to successfully advocate for body cameras in their local police department. "We did it just like you taught us," one student said excitedly. "We gathered data, built coalitions, and presented our case professionally. The city council voted unanimously." Moments like these reminded Lisa why she'd chosen this path. Change wasn't just about big legislation or high-profile cases. It was about empowering ordinary people to stand up for what's right. Her father had recently published a book about their experience, titled Justice Through Dignity. It became required reading in many law schools and police academies. The dedication read, "To Lisa, who showed us that one person's courage can light the way for millions." As Lisa prepared for another community forum that evening, she reflected on how far they'd come. That troubling traffic stop had sparked a movement that touched countless lives. But she knew the work was far from over. "Every day brings new challenges," she often said. "But as long as we approach them with respect, determination, and a commitment to justice, we can keep moving forward." The sun was setting as she drove to the forum, passing the very street where it all began. She smiled, knowing that sometimes the darkest moments can lead to the brightest transformations. Here's part 6 of the story, continuing with 680 words. A decade had passed since that pivotal morning, and Lisa found herself in Washington, D.C., preparing to testify before Congress. The Senate Judiciary Committee was considering national police reform legislation, and her expertise was crucial to the discussions. Her organization had become a nationally recognized force for positive change. They'd helped implement successful reforms in over 200 cities, trained thousands of officers, and educated millions of citizens about their rights. As Lisa entered the Senate chamber, she carried a thick folder of data, testimonials, and success stories. Her father, now in his 70s but still sharp as ever, sat in the gallery, beaming with pride. "Madam Chair, distinguished members of the committee," Lisa began, 10 years ago, "I experienced something that changed my life's direction. Today, I'm here to share how that experience led to solutions that are working across America." She presented compelling evidence. Cities that adopted their recommended reforms saw a 40% decrease in civilian complaints and a 30% increase in crime-solving rates. Community trust metrics had improved dramatically. One senator asked, "Ms. Thompson, critics say these reforms are expensive. How do you respond?" Lisa smiled. "Senator, the cost of lawsuits, settlements, and lost community trust far exceeds the investment in proper training and accountability. Our data shows that reformed departments actually save taxpayers money in the long run. Her testimony made national headlines. More importantly, it influenced the final legislation, which included many of her organization's recommendations. Back home, Lisa's impact was visible everywhere. The police academy now had a state-of-the-art training center focused on de-escalation and community relations. The facility was named the Thompson Center for Justice Education in honor of both Lisa and her father. At the dedication ceremony, the police chief who had once overseen those problematic officers spoke. Lisa Thompson didn't just change our department, she changed our culture. We're better servants of our community because of her persistence and wisdom. Lisa's organization had also expanded into technology. They developed AI-powered tools to analyze police encounter data, identifying patterns that could predict and prevent problematic behavior before it escalated. One of their most innovative programs brought together officers and community members for monthly dinners. No agenda, no formalities, just people sharing meals and stories. These simple gatherings had done more to build trust than any formal training program. Lisa often received letters from officers thanking her. One wrote, "I joined the force to help people. Your work reminded me of that mission when I'd lost my way. Now I wake up every day proud of the badge I wear." Her youth program had produced its first graduates who were now police officers themselves. These young officers brought fresh perspectives and deep community connections to their departments. During a reunion event, one of these officers shared, "Growing up, I feared the police. Lisa's program showed me I could be part of the solution. Now I'm the officer I wished I'd seen in my neighborhood as a kid." Lisa's father had become something of a celebrity in legal circles. His book had spawned a documentary series exploring the intersection of law, justice, and community action. At 75, he still traveled the country speaking at law schools. On the anniversary of the original incident, Lisa always returned to that street corner. This year, she found a surprise waiting. The city had installed a memorial plaque. It read, "On this spot, a moment of injustice sparked a movement for change, dedicated to all who stand up for what's right." The current mayor, who had been a city council member during those early reform discussions, joined her at the unveiling. "Lisa, you showed us that accountability and effective policing aren't opposites, they're partners." As cameras flashed and reporters asked questions, Lisa thought about all the people who had made this journey possible. The witness who recorded that first video, the community members who attended forums, the officers who embraced change, and countless others who believed in justice. That evening, Lisa and her father sat in her office, looking at photos from the past decade. They traveled from a troubling traffic stop to the halls of Congress, transforming a moment of injustice into a nationwide movement for positive change. "You know what I'm most proud of?" her father asked. "Not the awards or the legislation, but the fact that you never lost sight of the goal, bringing people together to create a more just society." Lisa nodded, knowing their work would continue. Every day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to build bridges and create understanding. That was the true legacy of that morning 10 years ago, not just changing laws, but changing hearts and minds. Here's part 7 of the story, the final chapter, with 680 words. 20 years had passed since that morning that changed everything. Lisa sat in her office, now located in a building her organization owned outright. On the wall hung photos chronicling 2 decades of progress, community gatherings, training sessions, legislative victories, and countless smiling faces. Today was special. She was preparing for the first International Summit on Police Community Relations, hosted right here in her city. Representatives from 50 countries were arriving to learn about the Thompson model of reform. Her father, now in his 80s but still mentally sharp, arrived with coffee and the morning paper. The headline read, "Global Leaders Gather to Study American Success Story in Police Reform." "Remember when we thought we were just filing a simple complaint?" He chuckled, settling into his favorite chair. Lisa smiled. Their journey had transformed not just their lives, but the landscape of law enforcement across the nation. The organization now employed over 500 people, operated in every state, and had trained more than 100,000 officers. As delegates arrived for the summit, Lisa gave them a tour of their city. She showed them the community centers where officers and residents work side by side, the youth academies where tomorrow's leaders learned about civic engagement, and the technology labs where new tools were developed to enhance accountability. One delegate from Europe asked, "How did you maintain momentum for 20 years? Most movements fade away." "We focused on solutions, not just problems," Lisa explained. "And we never forgot that real change happens through relationships, not just regulations." That afternoon, during the summit's opening ceremony, Lisa received a surprise. The United Nations was awarding her organization special consultative status, recognizing their work as a model for global human rights advancement. As she accepted the award, Lisa's thoughts drifted to that morning 20 years ago. She could never have imagined that a troubling traffic stop would lead to this moment. "Every person in this room has the power to create change," she told the assembly. "It starts with refusing to accept injustice and continues with the patient work of building something better." The summit featured presentations from officers who had been part of the transformation. One veteran sergeant shared how the reforms had actually made his job more fulfilling. "I joined the force to protect and serve." Lisa's work helped us remember what that really means. Community members spoke too. A grandmother described how her neighborhood had gone from fearing police to partnering with them to reduce crime. A teenager explained how the Youth Ambassador program had changed his life trajectory. The international delegates were particularly interested in the technology solutions. Liz's team had developed predictive analytics that helped departments identify and address potential issues before they became problems. The system was now used in over 1,000 police departments worldwide. On the summit's final day, Lisa announced a new initiative, a global fellowship program that would bring international law enforcement leaders to study their methods firsthand. The program was fully funded by a coalition of foundations impressed by their track record. That evening, at the closing reception, Lisa's father gave a toast. 20 years ago, my daughter faced a choice: accept injustice or work for change. She chose the harder path, and look what we've built together." As the celebration continued, Lisa stepped outside for some air. She found herself on that familiar street corner, now marked with a small monument commemorating the birth of their movement. A young police officer patrolling nearby recognized her and approached. "Ms. Thompson, I just wanted to thank you. I grew up in this neighborhood, went through your youth program, and now I'm serving my community. You showed us that change is possible." Lisa felt tears in her eyes. This was why they'd done it all, not for awards or recognition, but to create a world where justice and dignity prevailed. Back inside, her father was waiting with a gift, a first edition of his memoir, updated with a new chapter about their international impact. The dedication now read, "To Lisa, who proved that one person's courage can change the world, and to all who join us in the continuing journey toward justice." As Lisa looked around the room full of people committed to positive change, she knew their work would continue. The seeds planted 20 years ago had grown into a forest of hope, sheltering communities around the world. The morning that began with injustice had ultimately led to a legacy of transformation, proving that when people stand together for what's right, remarkable things can happen.